Rillimat tervepä terve again. Today I'm going to show you how to use the Dynamics 365 Voice of the Customer module, which is used for sending out customer feedback surveys and other types of surveys from D365 to, for example, contacts in CRM. So today I'm going to cover the Voice of the Customer installation steps, how to create a basic survey, how to insert some dynamic data from D365 into the surveys, and how the surveys are sent out via email from D365. On top of that, we will see how the survey will look like from the end user point of view, and also how to respond to the survey and how the survey responses will be seen in the D365. So first of all, the installation part of this. The best part of this is probably the fact that this is a free service for all the D365 instances that are deployed to the Dynamics online service. So now I could get that out of the way. So in your Dynamics 365 admin center, you can see the solutions that are deployed or available for deployment for your D365 instance. And in here, there's a list on the bottom of the list. There's the Voice of the Customer for D365 available. I've already installed it, and as we can see here, there would be an upgrade also available for our instance here. But once you install that, or before you actually installed it, it's in not installed status, and from here, once you click or select this record, you will see install button over here where I have the upgrade button available right now. In the installation itself, there's nothing specific or difficult. Once you start the installation, it will ask you to accept the terms of service, and pretty much that's it. And after it's installed in the D365 user interface, you will have a separate navigation item here on the main navigation for Voice of the Customer service. And within that, you will have the surveys, the responses, and so on, the themes that you can design for your surveys, available all here in the user interface. On top of that, in the settings area of D365, there are a few items available after the installation. For example, the basic configurations that you can do from here, the logs, and then one more thing which I'm going to cover towards the end of this session today is how you can move a survey from one D365 instance to another, and this is the tool to do that, the imports part in the settings area. But first of all, you have the surveys. I have also already a couple of test surveys available here, which I have already published, but let's see how it's done basically from the scratch. So once you have the survey form in D365, that will show up as an empty form, and first you give the survey a name, and there are lots of attributes for the survey. I will not cover all of them here in this session, but a few which are worth mentioning. So for example, here the anonymous responses, either they are allowed or not. That's a setting that you define here. Also, if you want to restrict multiple completions or responses to a survey, that's set in here. So basically, once that's set to yes, then one specific contact cannot answer or respond to the survey more than once. Surveys can be implemented in multiple languages. You have the translations file over here, which you can use to define the texts in different languages you want. And the XML file here is used for moving the survey from one instance to another. Let's get back to that in a moment. Then you can have the actual design of the survey in another form, but you can, for example, add a logo here for the survey template that you will be using. Then you have the header text for the survey, the runtime title, and so on. We'll see all of these in a moment once I show how the designed survey will show up in the browser when user gets, or rather the contact gets, the survey invitation. Here is an important part of the survey. This is the email snippet, kind of like a code which is sent out via email to the CRM contacts who we want to answer the survey. And this is the snippet code that will be inserted to the email message that gets sent out to the respondents of the survey. And into this snippet, the dynamic parts, the piped data, will be inserted. I show you in a moment how that is done. So from the basic form you can set these type of settings for the survey. After the voice of the customer is installed, there's also the designer form installed for the surveys. And once you select the designer form, you will have the user interface for setting the survey, how it looks like when user gets the or opens the survey itself. So here we have already a couple of piped data elements in the header part of the first page of this sample survey here. You have altogether 6 or 7 piped data types that you can enter to one survey. Here I have inserted a dynamic element called customer piped data, and as a sample purposes I have another one here called other one piped data. Into these elements we will insert dynamically data from CRM at runtime when user actually opens the survey. In the second page of this survey I have the actual questions that the end users will see and answer, and into this I have also added one other pipe data element as an example purpose. Here within one question we can also insert dynamic data. This is the user pipe data now, so the question is, how satisfied are you with someone as your account manager? And to this someone element we'll insert the contact owner from CRM as a dynamic data part. And then finally you have the ending page of the survey. Here I use the same user pipe data element that we had already here within the third question of the survey. On the right side you have all types of different survey questions that you can add to the survey itself. There are text answers, dates, multiple responses, numerical answers, and so on. Lots of different kinds of questions. I have a few here as a sample purposes. For example, the ratings question, and also the recommendation question that's used for getting the feedback from the contact, that how satisfied are them for our services. So next thing to show you is that how we actually send out the survey invitations and how the pipe data, meaning the dynamic data, is inserted to the survey itself. There are at least 2 possibilities to send out the survey invitation emails from D365, either sending them out using an email templates and direct email functionality, or then using a workflow which contains the email sending step, and then within that we'll configure the dynamic parts of the survey pipe data. Today I'm going to use the workflow option. It's not very different for developing an email template and sending out the direct email, so the end result is identical, and there are not that much differences in doing the configuration parts of this. So for that I already have a workflow here, which I've actually also published already. So basically I have a workflow for a contact entity, which is run here as an on-demand process. So I, for example, can insert contacts to a marketing list for whom I want to send out the survey invitation emails, or then pick contacts from advanced find queries or quick find queries and then send out the invitation email by running this workflow as an on-demand process for those contact records. Within this workflow I have one workflow step that is executed, and that is of course the actual email that gets sent out to the contacts who I select in the D365 user interface. The recipient of the email message will be the contact, and then there's of course the title, and within the email body itself I have a couple of dynamic parts or elements just for sample purposes. There's the first name of the contact and the city of the address of the account that the contact belongs to. Then we have the static text, and below that the email, the survey snippet code, which I mentioned earlier. And as you can see in this snippet here, I've already inserted the dynamic parts, the pipe data parts. Those are not here yet in the voice of the customer survey form. So here you have only the code for the survey, but within the workflow or the email template that you use for sending out the invitations, you will actually need to configure the dynamic elements. And as you can remember, I had the customer, the user, and then the other one dynamic piped data elements used in the survey. And for these three I need to configure here that what are the dynamic data from CRM that will be replaced in the runtime when the survey is shown. So for the customer element I will insert the full name of the contact. For the other one element I will insert the city again of the parent account of the contact, and within here there is one special thing for, as you saw in the designer of this survey, once it loads, I had the other one element in the header part, and here you can see that there's an underscore between the other word and the number 1. But what I've seen and tested here is that it does not work if you type in other underscore 1 here in the snippet. The name of the attribute is actually other one without the underscore, so that's how it for some reason works. And then finally for the user element I map the owning user's full name, the owning user of the contact, which is then shown in the survey once it's loaded. So here's the workflow that I use for sending out the email invitations. The next part that I'm going to show is that how to actually send out the invitation email for the contact. So I have some sample data here in this CRM instance. I used a Jim Glynn contact for showing you this as an example. and there's a Hotmail email configured for this contact, so that's why I run now the workflow against this contact here. And there is this send survey invitation email workflow available to be run as an on-demand, so I select that, and then the workflow is executed in the background. And to make sure that the email is actually sent out, I can do, of course, an advanced find query in D365 to see that when the email message gets sent out. So I select email message is here as a query type or the target of the query, and then email message is created on today. And there seems to be now one email that is sent out. Its status is already sent, and the timestamp is pretty much this minute here, so it was just sent out to Jim, and the sender is myself now. I didn't configure that in the workflow to be different than myself, so as I'm the owner of the workflow, then I will be the sender of this email message also. There is the header of the email that I configured in the workflow on top of the code that gets inserted to the email subject line, because it's sent out here by using the server-side synchronization method of D365. This is configured to our Exchange Online to use to send out the email itself. Now I have the Jim's Hotmail address here available, already opened his Outlook, and here we can see that there is an email that he has received now 1 minute ago from myself. And once I open this email, there is this email message available now that we configured in the workflow. And basically there's this first name at the city of the account where Jim belongs to in the CRM, and then of course the email link that contains the code snippet for opening the survey itself. This text here is also configurable in the survey information form. So if I show you quickly where that was, I go back to the survey basic information, and once the form loads, I select the survey form type, and here the text for the survey link is configured here. So it says click here to answer the survey, and that's here in the invitations part. Click here to answer the survey. That's the text that will be mapped to the link itself here. Once I click the link, it will open up in another browser tab, and now it's loading those dynamic parts, meaning the pipe data. And one thing that I noticed while I was testing this was that if I hover mouse over the text of the pipe data element, it will actually show the pipe data elements like that instead of the dynamic data from CRM. Not sure yet, I haven't checked that if that mouse over text is something which can be hidden, or if it's fixed in the latest version of Voice of the Customer. As you remember, I had the upgrade available for this version, so it might be that this is already fixed. But anyways, once this is opened in the browser, the dynamic elements, the pipe data elements, are replaced by the data that I mapped in the workflow. And here you can see the full name of the contact, the city of the parent account of the contact, and once I click next, I will then see the actual questions. And here Jim is actually using our Habit product, which is meant for in-context learning solution which can be used, for example, within the D365. So Jim is from an organization that uses our Habit product, so I answer that he is now using the Habit product. He's very satisfied. He purchased the product in the beginning of this month, and of course for the account manager he couldn't be more satisfied, so he selects 5 stars. And then the NPS question, which actually gives us the satisfaction of his or rather the recommendation rating of the product for his colleagues or friends. As you know, the NPS is a kind of like an average figure that is calculated from either the 9 and 10 answers or I think it's from 0 to 6, but the 7s and 8s are not counted towards the NPS, so I select the 9 for this. I click submit, and now I see the completion page of the Voice of the Customer survey, and here's also one dynamic part of the survey text that I entered there as the piped data. So that's it from the survey part of it. Now I can go back to the actual survey here in the in D365, and I refresh the page just to be sure that I see the responses. It will take some time to load, so I paused the video for that. Okay, so now the page is refreshed, and next we'll check the survey responses for this test survey that I have over here. So those responses are shown from the top navigation when you select the survey responses navigation item, and as you remember, I selected to allow only one unique response per contact, so that's why there are no more than one now, and this is locked from a couple of days ago when I tested this for the first time for this survey. So the response that I gave today is not locked towards this survey, even though it opened up properly in the invitation link. So if I check the actual answers that Jim gave for this answer here, so they are shown here in the question responses section of the response form, and here you can see the 4 questions that I have in the survey. The first text question, then the rating, the usability of the product, and the purchase date of the product, and then the NPS score that he gave for the question. Now I have added one question since I initially created this survey. That was the question about the customer responsibility person here in this company. So that was added since I published this survey for the first time. So that's why when I did when Jim actually responded to this survey for the first time, the 5th question was not then yet published, and that's why he only answered to the 4 questions showing up here. Then once you start to get more answers or responses to your survey, then there is a dashboard available for the survey which shows some average figures for the responses of this survey here. Now when I only have one response for this survey, it's not very relevant looking dashboard graphs, but anyways, I wanted to mention that those are also available here. And of course you can design your own graphs or dashboards for showing up the KPI figures for the surveys. Now one more thing before we end today is I wanted to show you how the surveys are moved from one CRM or D365 instance to another. And as I mentioned, that is done by an XML file transfer. In the basic section of the survey, there is an XML file created when the survey is saved, and in this XML file there are all the things you answer or set here in the basic information form, also in the design part of it. So if I look at the XML itself, it looks like this. So basically there are the settings that I've used for the survey, and this all here is then used for deploying the same survey to another D365 instance. For example, if you have a sandbox instance where you first try it out and design the form and the survey, and then you want to move it to production instance, so this is very handy tool for doing it from one instance to another. So basically you have the XML file and the contents of it, then you go to the settings and you select the voice of the customer imports, and you create a new import record, and here is the survey XML to import, and then you just copy and paste the contents of the XML to the field over here, and then give the name and other information for the import, and once it's done you can do the import whenever you want, and you have the new survey available in another instance of D365. Okay, so this was basically it. Very basic scenarios and how to set up the surveys. There are of course lots of different configurations and settings which I did not cover today, but the purpose of today's screencast video was to show you the basic setup and how it's used, and how the piped data dynamic elements are used. I wanted to mention that also in this video, because in the web, if you do some research, there are information about that, but not that much of it. So hopefully this will help you when you set up the surveys and want to use the dynamic elements within the surveys. So thank you for your time and have a great day.